emotion, cognition, and memory. So it's a long session. Now and again, I will ask that we take breaks in between. So before we continue, as usual, I would like to hear your voice. Let's just break an ice. What's your understanding of the term emotion? We have emotion, cognition, and memory. Remember, we as psychology students normally we come across questions. You'll ask us questions as to what is the meaning of this? What is the meaning of this? If a business management student comes to you and say, what's your understanding of the term emotion, cognition, memory? We need to be able to define. If not define, at least come up with synonyms of these words. So in your understanding, what do you understand about emotion, cognition, and memory?
So I am going to choose the word cognition. I think it's the process of how you think and you understand things.
Yes, the process of how you think and understand things.
And how you perceive, like your perspective on certain information.
Yes, perception. Remember, your perception has to go with what? Like you're saying, thinking and reasoning. So you are totally correct. Thanks for it.
Thank you.
Pleasure. Thanks, Avela. Another one. Avela has explained cognition. Now let's explain. I need an explanation for emotion as well as what? Memory. Your understanding.
Morning, sir.
Morning. I don't see your name.
It's Daphne.
Daphne. Okay,
Yes,
okay, I can see now. Daphne, thanks very much.
I'll be explaining emotion. So the way I understand it is your mental state that is linked to your behavior and your feelings.
That's a good explanation. Your mental state, you started it very well. Your mental state, which has influence or linked with your behavior. Thanks very much. That's a good one. Last one, guys. Last one, let's go. We are done with cognition, emotion. Then the last one, memory. Your understanding of memory. Someone on the chat, Tando Wisdom Hardware says, memory refers to the ability to retain and store information. Sweet and short. Yes, memory is an ability to retain and store information. So we can also link memory with our memory card. What do you use your memory card for? To store information, important information. What do you use your USB for? To store information. What do you use your phone as well to store information? So memory, the term, the complementing term, memory in your mind, memory devices refer to the ability to retain and store information. So it's important to be able to define this weight before you even continue studying. You need to be able to define the weight, own your textbook, own your study materials. Then you continue studying. So thanks very much. That's a nice one, guys. That's a nice icebreaker. So let's break it down now. Let's open our emotion, cognition, and memory. We'll start with what? Emotion. Emotion and motivation. Firstly, you cannot discuss emotion without understanding motivation. So they link emotion and motivation. You also see in your unit that the lecture sent you, emotion and motivation, they link together. So let's define them. Below, definitions, close link concepts. How do they link? Emotion, definition, and close link concepts. So definition, you will go up. These are the definitions. How do they link? Close link concepts. So whatever that I'll be discussing, you'll find in your study unit. This is a summary to make things much easier for you. Let's start with motivation first, or with emotion. Carefully explain the emotion. It refers to the experience of feelings such as fear, joy, anger, anxiety. Emotion activates and affects our behavior. You see, as Daphne explained it, emotion refers to experience of feelings such as fear. Remember, feelings are either negative or positive, are either pleasant or unpleasant. So fear is unpleasant, joy, pleasant feeling, anger is unpleasant, anxiety, it depends. Emotions activate and affect our behavior. Emotions activate. That's why someone will come to you and say, today you are so moody. Why? Because we can see your emotions through your facial. We can see our emotion through your behavior. Yeah, they say emotions activate and affect your behavior. What you feel inside, we can see outside. Your behavior will influence your emotions will influence the behavior. Then what is motivation? Motivation is referred to an internal state that activates and gives direction to our thoughts, feelings, and action. Let me repeat. Motivation refers to an internal state that activates, gives direction to our thoughts and feelings. For instance, you want to pass your exams now. You want to make sure that you pass the exams. What happens after? You want to make sure that in order for you to pass your exams, you need to study effectively, to study smart, to work hard. Work hard, including waking up in the mornings on Saturdays to attend Mr. Zwane's classes. So that is, it's a motivation from within, referred to the internal state. The internal state is a drive that you want to achieve, you want to pass the motion. Refer to the internal state that activates, gives direction to your thoughts. Give direction to your thoughts. What is it that I need to do in order for me to pass? Those are your thoughts. Those are your feelings. Refer to the internal state that activates and gives direction to our thoughts, feelings, and action. So action will be studying. Feeling is that desire that you want to achieve. Thoughts, consequences. If I don't study, I'll get a fail. If I study, I'll get a wonderful pass mark. So thoughts, feelings, and actions. So they link. Emotions has to do with feelings. Both emotions and motivation, internal state, they are internally. However, visible from the outside. Refer to an internal state internally that activates and gives direction to our thoughts, feelings, and action. The only way you can see that you are motivated, you can through action. A motive is a specific need or a desire that arouses the organism and directs its behavior towards a goal. A motive is a specific need or a desire that arouses an organism and directs its behavior towards a goal. That motivation. What is it that you like to achieve? You like to pass exam. What is it that you like to achieve? You like to buy a car. What is that you like to achieve? You like to lose weight or gain weight. So it's a motive. A motive is a specific need or a desire that arouses the organism, directs its behavior towards the goal. All motives are triggered by a stimulus. Remember, stimulus, human nervous system. Anything that triggers your behavior. All motives are triggered by stimulus. In this instance, from the examples that I gave you, a stimulus is what? PYC1501. You like to pass. You like to get a car. That's a stimulus. You like to lose weight. That's a stimulus. Meaning, it's your goal. Anything that stimulates your behavior. For you to wake up in the morning and make sure that you attend the class. Your studies are your stimulus. PYC and all your modular stimulus, they influence your behavior. They say all motives are triggered by stimulus. So without the stimulus, you won't be a motive. You need something that will drive you. Currently, PYC101. You wake up and attend the class. All motives are triggered by what? Stimulus. Then on our right hand side, the link, how similar or how does motive and emotion differ? Both motives and the arousal of emotions activate behavior. Both motives and the arousal of emotion activate what? Behavior. Those are the similarities. They say both motivation and emotion activate what? Activate behavior. For us to see your emotions, for us to see that you're motivated, we see through what? Through your behavior. Remember, we cannot see you internally, but through your action and behavior, we can determine that today you are not okay. you are happy, you are motivated, you are really driven. We see similarities. Both motives and the arousal of emotions activate behavior. Motives are often accompanied by what? Emotions. Motives are often accompanied by emotions. In whatever that you want to achieve, you are influenced by what? Accompanied by what? Emotions. For instance, you like to buy a car. What type of emotion would you associate with you buying a car or getting your car? Is joy. Happy feelings. Is joy. What emotion can you associate with you waking up every morning and want to pass the emotion? Is yes, it's anxiety. It's fear because you don't want to fail. We can also include fear because you don't want to fail. Remember, fear is not negative. It drives you. As soon as you feel that guilt, you experience fear that you want to pass the module, automatically you pull up your socks. Motives are often accompanied by emotions. So studies, fear, anxiety, as well as joy in the end, as soon as you pass the module, happiness. Motives often accompany emotions. So there's no motive without emotions. They go together. Disappointment, they go together with motive and emotion. Emotions typically have motivational properties of their own. They say emotions typically have motivational properties of their own. What they're trying to say here, your level of happiness differ. Your level of joyfulness differ. Your level of anger differ. You can be slightly happy, extremely joyful, less, you experience less joy. Same applies to your anger. There's range, the angry bit. That's why they say emotions typically have motivational properties of their own. Depends on what influences your emotion in that particular moment. I hope you get me. Let's move on. So for you to understand emotion in broader aspects, let's look at what? Classifications of emotions. Emotions are classified. Remember here they say emotions typically have motivational properties of their own. Here they're trying to break it down. What do they mean by what do they mean by properties? In this case, let's look at classifications of emotion. The term classification only say we classify things, meaning that we break down things. Classification, we break down a classification of human beings. A classification of human beings, we look at the race. We know that we have black people, white people. That's a classification. When we break it down, we have Chinese, we have Indians, we have German, meaning we're classifying human race. So here is classification of emotion. We break it down. For you to understand the emotions, we need to break it down. We classify, we categorize emotions. One, we have primary emotion, followed by secondary emotion, positive and negative emotion, emotions of various intensity, internal and external expressed emotion. Let's start with primary as well as secondary emotion. Emotions differ. Firstly, they say primary emotions are those emotions that shared by people throughout the world, regardless of the culture. Primary emotions are those emotions shared by people throughout the world, regardless of culture. For instance, there are 8 primary emotions. 8 primary emotions, the core emotions. Fear is primary emotion. When they say primary emotion, they mean all over the world, in all human species. The way we define fear is the same. Fear is fear. Surprise is a surprise. When I surprise you. Sadness is sadness. Disgust is disgust. Anger, anticipation, joy, and acceptance. The only way we have only one way of interpreting these terms. You go to Chinese, sadness is sadness, something that the unpleasant feeling. South African unpleasant feelings. You go to German, sadness is sadness. That's why they say primary emotions. Definition is the same regardless of what? Culture. When you fear something, you fear something. There's no other interpretation. You cannot interpret fear as what? As happiness. Surprise is surprise. I hope you get me. Primary emotions are those emotions shared by people throughout the world, regardless of culture. These are the core 8. How to identify primary emotions? How to identify primary emotion? Multiple choice questions. Remember, we are writing multiple choice questions. So the examiners, the lecturers, they have a way of asking questions. For instance, when you look at this, it is likely that they can ask this question. You'll find this type of question in your multiple choice, in your assignment question. Exam, you might find it as well. A question like, how do I identify primary emotions? These are the 4 options. They must be evident in all cultures. Yes, they say regardless of all culture. They must be evident in all cultures. Fear, surprise, sadness, disgust, joy, anticipation, joy, and acceptance. They must be evident in all cultures. They must contribute to what? Survival. They must contribute to survival. What do they mean by that? They must contribute to survival. When you experience death in the family or death in your loved ones, we expect you to be what? Sad. We expect you to be sad, not happy. When someone dies, we expect you to be sad. And they say they must contribute to survival. When you buy a house or when someone buys a house, the feeling that is associated with buying a house is what? It's joy. Yes, they say they must contribute to our survival. There must be evidence in our survival. They must relate to our survival. They must be associated with distinct facial expression. When you say you are happy, we need to see it in your facial expression, or you need to demonstrate in your facial expression. Facial expression, when you say you are angered, we need to see anger, we need to see sadness. When we are disgust, we need to see disgust. They must be associated with what? Distinct facial expression. They must be evident in non-human species. That's an interesting one. How to identify primary emotion? They must be evident in non-human species. Non-human species, let's make an example of what? Of a lion. When the lion is happy, or when animals in general, particularly dogs, cats, when they're happy, how do you see that they're happy? Normally, they play with what? Their tail. Normally, they play with their tail. You can see that, okay, they are happy. Yes, they say they must be evident in non-human species. When you see the dog playing the tail or a cat, you associate the feeling with, they're excited. When they play around, you can easily say they are joyful. However, when they show the teeth, they say mostly when they show their teeth with aggressiveness, we can easily say they are angered. They are angered. So this type of emotion are visible in human species and non-human species. Multiple choice questions. They might say, not mention 4 ways to identify primary emotion. They say to you, push one is incorrect. 4 ways to identify primary emotions. Choose the one that is incorrect. So the correct ones are these. They must be evident in all cultures. They must contribute to survival. They must be associated with facial expression. They must be evident in non-human species. Perhaps they might change this and say, primary emotions are only evident in human species. Primary emotions are only evident in human species. That's what they can include as 5th option. Then they say to you, choose the incorrect option. I hope you get me. They might include these and say 8 type of emotions Then you play around with options. They give you 4 options. We say fear, surprise, sadness, disgust, anger, anticipation. Then below, you include other type of emotion. Then you choose. Is it all of the above? Only 2 of these? So just make sure that you know this, the typical 8. These are the key 8 type of emotions. Then you have what? Secondary emotions. Primary is the main, it's the start. Primary emotions, secondary emotion. Secondary emotions are those that are found in some cultures, but not in all of them. They may be considered as the various combinations of primary emotions as influenced by cultural background. You see the difference here. They say secondary emotions are those that are found in some cultures, but not in all cultures. Primary, they say, primary emotions are those emotions that are shared throughout the world, regardless of culture, of the culture. Here, specific cultures, they may be considered as the various combination of primary emotion as influenced by cultural background. So from culture to culture, there are certain aspects where we experience or we express emotions differently. You see that mostly in the funerals. Like I've said, normally funerals, we expect people to what? To be sad. That's our culture. We expect people to be sad. But there's that thing they call it what? After tears. After tears. Most they call it after tears. As soon as you lay the person to rest after the funeral, we go home, then we enjoy ourselves through drinks, joyfulness. They say they're celebrating the life of the person. In some cultures they do it, in some cultures they don't do it. Those are what? Secondary emotions. Yeah, and some people will criticize the practice of after tears, that you can't really do this. Some they see it as being disrespectful, disgust. Whereas others they see as something that needs to happen because they are celebrating. At first, they are sad, then after hours, it's joy, celebrating the life. You understand? Secondary emotions are those that are found in some cultures, but not in all of them. They may be considered as the various combinations of primary emotions as influenced by cultural background. So from culture to culture, we express emotions differently. You'll hear that in some cultures, when the baby is born, it's joyful. We are happy for the baby's life. But in some cultures, normally when someone is born, the baby is born, they say, welcome to what? The word that they normally express. In short, they see the world as a place where people need to work, a place where people need to, they came to suffer. Because joyful is in eternity. When you die, they associate death with joy because you're going where? To your eternity. That's what they believe. When you death, that's where you find peace. Dying, you find peace. However, when you're living, there's no peace. So when a person is brought to earth, they cry. When the person dies, it's joyful because the person is going to experience peace in the internal world. So it's differ from culture to culture. I don't have other examples. Then positive and negative emotions. Okay, I'm thinking of something secondary emotions. Okay, let me allow you. Perhaps you have examples related to secondary emotions, how you express your emotion differently, something that has shocked you. Perhaps you've attended an event, you were told this is how we express our emotions. Yeah, please share. Please share your experience in relation to secondary emotion. Perhaps the examples that you have in relation to secondary emotion. Anyone, what have you experienced in relation to secondary emotions? Your culture, a place you visited, something that you had, an example of secondary emotion. Okay, it's fine. I can see that no hands, but do your research in relation to secondary emotion. I only have 2 examples. I remember PYC1501, the textbook A to Z, has some examples. Positive and negative emotions. Emotions are categorized into 2. You have positive and negative emotion. Positive emotion associated with what joy, love, acceptance are usually experienced as pleasurable and rewarding. That's a positive emotion. Whereas negative emotion are usually experienced as unpleasant. Are usually experienced as unpleasant. Unpleasant feeling, we can say, is sad, anger, disgust. That's unpleasant feeling. Fear depends. You can fear a snake. You can say that is an unpleasant feeling. However, you might, the type of feeling that is associated with anxiety. You fear what? You in love with someone. You're in love with someone, perhaps a crush. That feeling is what? As an anxiety within it. You fear the person because you love the person. So we cannot say that feeling is associated with anger, disgust, sadness. But we can say it's a joyful feeling because it makes you feel good. It's a fear that makes you feel good. So positive and negative. The third one, emotion of various intensity. Emotion of various intensity. Same applies to this. Emotions typically have motivational properties of their own. Emotion of various intensity. The intensity of emotion varies on a continuum ranging from extremely low to extremely high. The example I was giving you, you can be happy now or be extremely happy. You can be slightly happy. So it depends on the event. You can be angered by something, extremely angry, or just angry. So when they say extremely low, depends on the situation, what influences you. 4. Internal and external expressed emotion. Emotions are expressed and recognized in different ways. Emotions are expressed and recognized in different ways. We have physiological changes. Physiological changes are internal express of emotion. Physiological changes. Remember, physiological changes is unlike physical changes. Physiological is what is inside. Physiological is inside. Physiological changes of internal expression. When you feel joy, you feel it where? Inside. Then you see it from your external. So physiologically, when you are happy, normally you are seeing someone either for the first time or you are seeing a friend who has been arrested. You are seeing a friend who went to overseas. Now you are meeting him. You are happy. You are joyful. What will happen to your physiological? Your heart will pump because you are happy. Your heart will pump. Your lungs. We are waiting for that person in the airport. Blood flow. Blood flow will be smooth. Those are physiological changes. The changes internally. Again, when you are angry, you can see through your face. Your veins will pop up in your face. Again, your heart beats very fast because you are angry. Those are physiological changes, which are what? Internally. Emotion can also be expressed through words. This is externally. Emotion can also be expressed through words. Anger, frustration can be verbally expressed by swearing, shouting at someone. When you're swearing and shouting at someone, you can easily say you are frustrated or angry. When you are happy or joyful about something, you can see through your scream the words that you say. So this is internally, this is externally. Let's move on. Then the concept of emotion. The concept of emotion. We have emotions are feelings. We experience a variety of feelings in our everyday lives. Emotions are feelings that are actually linked to the meaning of a particular situation. So these are the 3 components of emotion. Make sure that you memorize this. Components of emotion, your physiological component, cognitive component, behavioral components. They are trying to break down the definition. Remember, the definition of emotion, the key definition, refers to the experience of feelings, emotions, cognition, experience of feelings such as fear, joy, anger, anxiety. Emotions activate and affects behavior. So this is a breakdown. Physiological, cognitive, and as well as behavior. Physiological arousal associated with emotions occur through physiological arousal associated with emotions occur through the action of autonomic nervous system, which regulates the activity of glands, smooth muscles, and blood vessels. Remember, human nervous system, our first chapter. We spoke about the physiological system. So physiological arousal is what happens inside, internally. We cannot see it, but we can feel it. It's associated with emotional care which is it happens through autonomic nervous system. Autonomic nervous system, remember, it regulates the movements in your body. It helps to send message. Without autonomous nervous system, you cannot be able to what? To send message. What type of messages? Mostly is related to what? The glands. When you experience something, certain hormones, certain chemicals will be released by the body. That is through autonomic nervous system. Smooth muscle, blood vessels. Physiological arousal associated with emotions occur through the action of autonomic nervous system, which regulates activity of glands, smooth muscles, and blood vessels. This is physiological, internally, you cannot see it. Then cognitive components. Emotions are highly personal and relate to subjective experience. Emotions are highly personal and relate to subjective experience. People cognitive process. Someone who think is Avela. Avela explained cognition by saying perception. Yes, they say people cognitive process about events in their lives are therefore the key determinant of the emotions they experience. Cognition as well as emotion, the relationship between emotion and cognitive is based on what? Subjective experience, something that you think about, is something you will reason, as well as what? Personal experience. For instance, when you see a snake, in your mind will tell you to run away. However, someone who's experienced someone who's experienced with animals, chances I won't run away, because you know that when you run away, the snake will strike. But an experienced person work with animals, know how to handle the situation. You have to stand still, don't face it, to avoid that the snake must split your eyes. No, then they say subjective experience. The way I interpret the event might differ from the way you interpret the event. When you come across a danger, perhaps you once experienced a similar event. You have a different way of handling it compared to the person who's seeing it for the first time. Emotions are highly personal, relevant, relate to subjective experience. Someone is writing the exam for the first time, particularly now that you are writing online exams. Someone may experience extreme anxiety because it's the first time. Particularly, you have invigilator app. You have Moodle, what? The first time you experience it, you experience extreme emotion. However, other person, so no, that is fine. After all, I don't want to sit for exams. I prefer online exam. So the way you interpret emotions differ from one person to the next due to personal experience, or if experience is subjective. People cognitive process about events in their lives are therefore the key determinant of their emotions. Behavioral components. Emotions are usually expressed in body language and non-verbal behavior. Body gestures and facial expression are used to show variety of basic emotion. So this is clear. through body language and non-verbal behaviors. When you talk, or when you don't talk, we look at your facial expression or your behavior. Emotion are expressed in both verbally and non-verbally. Let's continue. Theories of what? Of emotion. We have theories of emotion. The theory states that emotions occur when we apply a particular label to a general physical arousal. For us to interpret emotion, we need to associate the event. We need to label an event. They say that this is the theory describing emotion academically. The theory states that emotions occur when we apply a particular label to general physical arousal. The experience of emotion, therefore, depends on the two factors. What do they mean by labeling? As we're saying, the way we interpret events, the way we interpret situations differ. Why do they differ? Because of our personal experience, subjective experience. In those ways, they say we label events. We label events. An example will be, normally when you study, some prefer to study on their own, some would like to study in the groups. When you study in the groups, normally you'll be given an opportunity to express yourself, share answers with other fellow students. But you'll find some students, they are not comfortable in expressing their opinion because they are shy or they fear in talking in public. However, when they write their exams, find those students that they want to get high marks. So that's the key. It differs, meaning they label the event, they label the crowd as fear. When they see a crowd, a group of people, how they label it, they associate it with fear. I cannot talk in front of people, meaning you labeling, they make judgment. However, someone might say, no, I'm most effective in a crowd setting. Again, that's a labeling. That's how you see the event. Working at night, someone might say it's dangerous to work at night, but some people prefer to do things at night, prefer to drive during the night, prefer to club during the night, because that's how they label. Some might say it must safer to drive at night because there are not a lot of cars in the streets. Someone must say, no, driving at night is associated with danger, at least when you drive in midnight. So you will label the events due to our personal experiences. How do we label them? Through autonomic arousal as well as cognitive interpretation. The experience of emotion, therefore, depends on two factors. The experience of emotion depends on two factors. Autonomic arousal, remember autonomic arousal, autonomic nervous system, meaning physiological components. This is physiological. How we interpret emotions internally. When you see either danger or joyfulness, your body internally changes. Then cognitive interpretation, how you interpret the situation. Whereas danger is positive or negative emotion. How do we break it down? They give a formula here. How to break it down? They say stimulation, arousal, label, emotion, and behavior. Stimulation, arousal, label, emotion, and behavior. Let's come up with an example. A stimulation, remember stimulation, anything that triggers the behavior. Anything that triggers the behavior. You're walking the streets, suddenly you see a lion. A lion in that case will be a stimulation. You see a lion, that is it's a stimulus, a stimulation. What happens in your body? Arousal. Autonomic nervous system. What happens in your body is arousal. You become scared. Once you're scared, there are changes in your body. Heart rate is high. You sweat. your brain rate is high. That is arousal, depending on what you see. Then labeling is what? They say arousal and label, they go together, plus. Why are you experiencing this form of physiological arousal? Because of your labeling. Labeling is what you see danger. You know lions are dangerous. So you label it as danger. Danger, you experience emotion. Follows what? Emotions. What do you do? Remember, the emotion is fear. What do you do now? Behavior. You either run, cry, some might faint. So stimulation first, something that triggers the behavior. Exams. Exams are coming, you have received your timetable. That is the stimulation. Depends on how you interpret the timetable. Whether it's close, the exams are too close. If not too close, questions like, did I study enough? That is labeling. Did I study enough? If you didn't study enough, you see danger, you see experience anxiety. Your body, you experience body changes. Because of your labeling, you experience body. If you are relaxed, your labeling is relaxed, no, I'll master this exam. Arousal as well will be different. Then emotions and behavior, your actions. Your action, what you do, you study, further you pull up the socks, or you experience anxiety, you want to experience anxiety, you have to postpone the exam and you don't write. You can see your performance drops. That's true behavior. So these are the two theories, how they interpret the level of emotion. How do we experience emotion from one step to the last? The theory claims that the component of physiological arousal and cognitive process are not equally important in the interpretation of emotion. Instead, the way we think results in emotion. So this is cognitive appraisal theory. It says, yes, two-factor theory is correct. I agree with two-factor theory. However, the theory claims that the component of physiological and cognitive process are not equally important. According to cognitive appraisal, says the theory claims that the component of physiological, the component of what? Physiological, which is this, and interpretation are not equally important in the interpretation of emotion. So according to this, they say not only the two are important to understand or to explain emotion. However, the way we think results in emotion. The way we think results in emotion, not only the two. This is not, in short, it is not only interpretation. It is not only the way our organs move internally. However, the way we think is a result of emotion. So they're trying to interpret this. However, the theory claims that the component of physiological arousal and cognitive process are not equally important in the interpretation of emotion, but also the way we think results in how we see emotions. That is cognitive appraisal. Then emotional intelligence. Emotional intelligence, what is emotional intelligence? Emotional intelligence refers to the combination of skills, including empathy, understanding what others are experiencing, self-control, self-awareness, sensitivity to the feeling of others, persistence, which is keep on going even when the situation is difficult, self-motivation, doing things for yourself and not relying on other people. So emotionally intelligent. We say people are emotionally intelligent because they're able to manage their emotion in regardless of situations. So the ability to manage your emotions, not to hurt others, and also not to harm yourself. In a situation, emotions refer to a combination of skills. The combination of skills, including empathy, understanding what others are experiencing. That is emotional intelligence. Self-control, self-awareness, sensitivity to the feelings of others, considering the feelings of others. That is intelligent, keeping on going even when the situation is difficult. Self-motivation, doing things for yourself and not relying on other people. Abilities of people with high emotional intelligence. How do you see that you can manage your emotions very efficient? How do you see that you're emotionally intelligent? They motivate themselves and keep on trying in the face of frustration. They motivate themselves and keep on trying in the face of frustration. They control impulses and delay gratification. They control impulses and delay gratification. For instance, when you are angry, when something angers you, you have a way of what? Of controlling the aggressiveness. Aggressiveness, we can see it through the face. We can see through as well through your voice, the words that you're saying. They say controlling impulses and delay gratification. They regulate their moods, do not allow emotion to interfere with their ability to think. They recognize emotions in others. They have hope. Those are people who are emotional intelligent. I think this is the last slide under emotion. The interpretation of emotion. How do they differ? Gender, the way we experience the way we interpret information, gender-wise differ. Cultural differ, from context to context differ. Gender, women have the reputation of being emotional than men. There's a say that men don't cry. Men don't cry. So interpretation of emotion in gender roles. Women have a reputation of being emotional than men. We know that it is known, it's not a fact. It is known that women are more emotional than men. However, according to a theorist, a US psychologist, however, it is actually fact. Men usually suppress their emotions, whereas women are more open about their emotions. You see? Normally, men suppress their emotions, whereas women express their emotions. Meaning, both men and women are emotional. The difference is that men suppress, whereas women mostly open up their emotions. It's their nature. They open up to their emotions. However, nowadays, because we know that suppressing your emotion will affect you, we find men do expressing themselves. Women have a reputation, so it's more of a reputation. Women have a reputation. However, the known fact is that both women and men are emotional. However, women, they express themselves mostly compared to men, but not all men, not all women. This is just a general statement. Cultural basis, cultural differences in emotional experience. Cultural basis, we explain how from culture to culture we experience emotion. They say there are also cultural differences in the way people think or interpret and express emotion, as well as the way that different cultures group emotions. From culture to culture, we experience emotions differently. The context of emotion, the context, the situation, knowledge of emotion, the circumstance in which an emotion is expressed is important in accurate understanding and interpretation express emotion. In the context, from context to context, how we express emotion. At church is the context. How do we express emotion? How do we show our emotions? Normally, it's joy. To sing is joy. That's a church setting. We cry. It's a church setting. It is expected that we become joyful. It's a place. If you feel like crying, you can cry. In a party, when in a club, in a party, you don't expect anyone to cry because the setting, the context is not, it does not, we don't expect you to cry in that context because we expect you to be joyful, happy, dancing, funerals, we expect you to what? To cry. So from context to context, we express emotion differently.
Can you explain secondary emotion again one more time for me?
Okay, secondary emotion one more time. Let me do that. Thanks, Avela. Secondary. Avela is saying, can you please explain secondary emotion one more time? That's the tricky part. I expected the question. Okay. Classifications of what? Emotions. Classification of emotion. How do we classify emotion? How do we break down the concept in emotion? We have primary and secondary. I'll start with primary in order for you to understand secondary. Let's start with primary. Primary emotions are those emotions shared by people throughout the world, regardless of culture. Then I said the word primary is the main. We experience fear in the same way. You go to the Chinese, you go to Africans, Asians, you go to Germany. The way we interpret fear is the same. The way we interpret surprise is the same. When we say surprise, we expect someone to be surprised. It's a shock. We expect someone in all cultures. Surprise is surprise. Sadness. When we say someone is sad, we expect sadness to be unpleasant. Even through your face, we can see sadness. Same applies to anger, anticipation, joy, and acceptance. It's evident in what? In all cultures. They say they must be evident in all cultures. The way we interpret these 8 types of emotions, they must be evident in all cultures. They must be contribute to our survival. Then you said, what do you mean by contributing to survival? They must relate to the way we live. When someone dies, we expect you to be sad, meaning they contribute to our survival. That's how we relate. When someone bought a car, we become happy. It's expected, even though we are not happy, we are angry, we are jealous. But the feeling that is associated with it is what is what survival is. But some people will be happy, some people won't be happy. It's part of our survival. We know it. When you are happy, we want to see it in your facial expression. Not to want to see it. They need to relate. Your facial expression need to relate to joyfulness. Your facial expression need to relate with anger. They must be evident in non-human species, even animals. You can see that now the lion is angry. Now my dog is not happy. Now my dog is excited that it sees food. Then secondary. Secondary is an opposite of primary emotion. That is number one, Navela. Secondary emotion is an opposite of primary. They say here, primary emotions are evident in all cultures, whereas secondary emotions are not evident in all cultures. They say secondary emotions are those that are found in some cultures, but not found in some cultures. The way they interpret fear, joy, might differ from culture to culture, depending on the circumstance. They say they may be considered as various combinations of primary emotions. They might be considered as various combination of primary emotion as influenced by cultural background. I made an example, a typical example. There's something that they call after tears. Something that they call after tears. Normally what happens is that when the person dies, obviously during that week, their funeral processes, you prepare to lay the person in his final place. You go to cemetery, you bury the person, then after you go home. Some they go home to eat, you get some drinks. Then during that situation, what you call after tears, we celebrate the life of the deceased person. We celebrate the life of the person who died. How do we celebrate? It depends on how the person used to live his or her life. Then some people drink. You volume up music. So that is what secondary emotion. They express emotions differently through what that event. Whereas some cultures don't practice it. Remember, culture is a custom, a way of living, it's a norm. It evolves. It's not written down, but it's how people live their lives. So that practice of after tears is part of secondary emotion. They say secondary emotions are those that are found in some cultures, but not in other cultures. Then some families won't allow that in their family. They say you can do it, but not around the family, not around the yard. You can do it perhaps in the park, not in front of their eyes, because they see it as what being disrespectful. So from culture to culture, it differs. That is secondary emotions. They may be considered as various combination of primary emotion. Combination of primary emotions. At first they were sad during the funeral, then later they are joyful. They accept that there is acceptance. They become happy, they celebrate their lives. Hence the combination sadness, joy, acceptance. The combination of primary emotion depends on the individuals from culture to culture. Then I said to you, come up with examples of what secondary emotions, because this is a key example that I have. I might not know others. However, now and again, I'm sure you attend events. There are things that you don't like in that family. There are things that you don't like in that cultural because you practice it differently. That is secondary emotion. They do things the way it pleases them, the way they've learned, compared to your culture. Through what? Emotions. I think I've explained it. I explained it. Avela, is my explanation clear? Does it make sense?
Yes, it does. So thank you so much.
Thank you. I can see Tando. Tando Wisdom. Tando Wisdom has given an explanation. Let me share the slide with you. Here is Tando Wisdom Hatebe has given an explanation of secondary emotion. Secondary emotions are emotional reaction we have to other emotions. For example, a person may feel ashamed as the result of becoming anxious or sad. In this case, anxiety would be the primary emotion, and that would be primary emotion. Remember, primary emotion, joyful, sad. While shame would be a secondary emotion. Let's interpret this. So Tando Google, secondary emotions are emotional reaction. Yes, they are emotional reaction. Maybe feel ashamed as a result of becoming anxious or sad. In this case, anxiety will be a primary emotion. Let's just interpret this first. When you feel ashamed because of what you're experiencing. You're in a crowd. They ask you to do a presentation in a crowd. You stand up to do a presentation. Suddenly you stutter or you forgot the words. How do we see it? How do we see that event? You see that event as sadness. Someone may see it as disgust. Then you, the person, you feel ashamed of yourself. You experience what? Too much anxiety. Because you feel like you have let yourself down. You feel ashamed, but someone may not feel ashamed because he or she knows that you are doing a stand-up comedy. They put you that jokes are not hilarious. Your feeling would be you feel ashamed. Someone may not feel ashamed because he or she is confident enough to tackle that situation. In this case, anxiety will be primary emotion. So it depends on how you see the situation, how you interpret the situation. Yeah, it's a good example. However, it does not provide a clear example on how to differentiate between primary and secondary emotion. That's why when you write assignments, we normally say to you, do not use Google. Because Google might give you an appropriate answer It might give you a correct answer, but in terms of application, it might challenge you. You see, this one is clear, gives a clear definitions. However, when you relate it with the content in the study material, it might differ. Also, the question, when you come up with multiple choice questions, it might confuse you a bit. So now and again, yes, use Google. However, make sure that you stick to what? To the learning material. Remember, the learning material is directed to your assignments, it's directed to your exams. But it's a good definition. Thanks very much, Tando. Okay, let's continue, guys. Cognition. We have how many? We have 50 minutes for cognition as well as memory. Let's continue with cognition. Let me share the slides. Cognition, the process of thinking, perception, reasoning. For us to understand cognition, number one, we did give the definition of cognition. Cognition has to do what? Problem solving, thinking, and reasoning. Problem solving, thinking, and reasoning. Let's start with problem solving. Steps in the process of problem solving. There are steps in the process of problem solving. I give you a problem right now. I say to you, solve the problem. So there are steps on how to solve the problem. Steps on how to solve the problem. Identify the problem and define it. For you to master problem solving, you need to be able first to see the problem within the problem and define it clearly. They say first, you need to identify the problem and define it clearly. As an aspiring psychologist, student psychologist, you'll come across this. As soon as you are done with your studies, you are a professional. People now and again come with their problems that may hammer their personal lives. However, it might be difficult for them to clearly define what affects them. You have to ask them questions. How do you feel? How can I help you? Then the person will express themselves. So it's your duty to help them to clearly define their problems. In your own words, you must see the problem as this. However, when you go for therapy, they give you a real problem because they've assisted you to think clearly. So number one, you need to identify and define it clearly. Then you need to explore different ways of tackling the problem, different ways, strategies on how to tackle the problem. So it tells you there are two different ways. You have trial and error approach and heuristic approach. What is trial and error approach? Trying all possible or more or less randomly. Trial and error approach. What do we mean by trial and error approach? Let's start here. Let's come up with an example. The only way to define this is to come up with what? Example. Example would be you've misplaced the key. The problem is that you have misplaced the key to open a specific door. You are working in a company, you lost the key. There are no security guards, there's no building manager. You phone the building manager, you phone the security, then they tell you, open the cupboard, you'll find a bundle. You find a bundle of keys. And the key to open the door is within those keys. Perhaps the keys are how many? 50. You're not sure of the key number. They say, no, use those keys. The key that that can open the door is within that bundle, the bundle of 50 keys. Remember, you identify the problem. The problem is that you have lost the key. Strategies that you need to apply in order to open the door is to you have been given the key. Let's try a trial and error approach. A trial and error approach, trying all possible or more or less random. Trial and error in this case would be to try all the possible keys. You have 50 keys. You try the keys one by one. That's what normally happens. You try the key one by one. They say trial and error. You try all possible keys. You look at the key and try one by one. Try all possible until you find the correct key. It's trial and error. It's a type of an approach. Even when you drive a car, let's assume that you're driving. However, there's no electricity. When there's no electricity, network is off. You can't even use your GPS. You can't even use your navigation. You want to go to a certain place. So trying all possible options, we driving to a place without a navigation, without asking someone, and you tell yourself that, no, I'll reach the place. I heard that the place is green. Definitely. So you try all possible areas. You try the keys one by one until you find a possible key. That's a trial and error approach. You try all strategies, available strategies, trial and error approach. Then there's heuristic strategy. The heuristic strategy, trying the likeliest solution first, then they reduce the alternative that have to be considered. You see the difference between the two. They say try all possible solutions. Here, try the likeliest solution using the key. The likeliest solution in this case, you look at the keys, you look at the hole of the key. The door handle, the key lock. You look at the key and you try the key that you think might fit. Meaning, in this case, you choose the keys. You don't try all the possible solutions, but you choose specific keys. They say trying all the likeliest solution for the problem. Instead of trying the keys one by one, you look at the key, you look at the hole of the lock. Then you try the likeliest solution until you find the correct key. They say trying all likeliest solution first and then reduce the alternative that have to be considered. When you're driving, the likeliest solution is you check the signs. The likeliest solution in order to reach your destination, you ask people around. That is heuristic strategy. You ask people around, you follow the signs, the roadway signs, that you turn left according to the board, you turn right, you use N12, you use R12, you use N17 when you go to Mpumalanga. Those are the likeliest solutions. You don't try all possible solutions, but the likeliest solution until you reach your destination. They say 3, explore possible solutions. Now that you are clear between trial and explore the possible solution. The possible solution, normally, which one do you choose between the two? Which one do you choose between the two? You choose trial and error or likely solution. They say explore the possible solution. Then you choose one. Evaluate and learn from the solution. Evaluate and learn from the solution. Now that you have chosen the key strategy to use, you have chosen the possible solution. Again, you don't say evaluate, you judge, you learn from it, you learn from the solution. So these are the key. First, you identify the possible solution, you identify the problem and define the problem. You explore the various solutions. This way, you explore the various solutions. Once you are sure of which solution to use, you exploit here. Number 3 as a possible solution. Once you apply it, you need to judge whether it's working or not. They say evaluate or learn from the solution. These are the 4 steps under psychology. Then you have what insight. They say a statement by an answer to the problem appears suddenly, and you wonder, why did you not see it before? Insight. You are in a group discussion. You are discussing about something. The challenge is you. Suddenly, one of you gets an answer. They say a statement by an answer to a problem appears suddenly, and you wonder why you did not see it before. You're arguing, you are trying to solve something. Then late in the later stage, you say, oh man, we should have done this. So it's a sudden, an answer that appears suddenly. A state whereby an answer to a problem appears suddenly. You were there for hours trying to solve a problem. Then in the later stage, you realize, no man, we're supposed to do 1, 2, 3 in order to find the problem. You know, all of you are surprised. That is what is insight. Insight. Through these forms of thinking, problem solving, there's what we call restricted thinking. What can restrict your thinking? Emotional barrier can restrict your thinking. What you feel inside can restrict your thinking. Emotion. Whether it's sadness or joyfulness, they restrict your thinking. You cannot study, you cannot pass the exam if you hear that someone died in your family. It's difficult to pass, depending on how you were close to the person. So that is emotional barrier. Emotional barrier can affect your thinking. Language barrier can affect your thinking. Learning barriers can affect your thinking. Perceptual barriers, cultural barriers. These are the forms of barrier that can affect your thinking. They say they restrict thinking. Cultural barriers, they restrict thinking. Back in the days, particular African families, you were told that women are not supposed to go to school. Instead, they're supposed to be housewives. That is a restricted thinking due to cultural barriers, cultural background. Restricted thinking is the information is limited. Perceptual barrier, the way you see event, but limit your thinking. Helps you are narrow-minded. They might restrict your thinking. Emotional length barrier, they might restrict your thinking. So these are the 4 type of barriers that now and I can restrict our thinking into achieving something. Moving on, reasoning. We have reasoning, different forms of reasoning. We have problem solving, we are done problem solving. Now we are discussing what? Reasoning and thinking. Reasoning, the structure of reasoning, relationship between the premise and the conclusion. Remember, the premise is supposed to support the conclusion. The premise provides the evidence that supports your conclusion. Those who are doing critical thinking, they can explain this. Those who are doing languages, English, they can explain this. The relationship between a premise and a conclusion. When I say it will rain, and it indeed rain, why am I saying it will rain? Because I can see it's cloudy outside. I'm saying it will rain because it's cloudy inside. That is the premise. It will rain because it's cloudy outside. It's a premise. And automatically it's rain. That is the conclusion. The premise provides evidence. Premise and evidence. It's cloud outside, supported by a conclusion. It actually rained. Then number 2, reason based on formal rules of logic. Reasoning based on formal rules of logic. Deduction reasoning as well as induction reasoning. Deduction reasoning, what is deduction reasoning? Refer to the process of drawing a conclusion that follows logically from 2 or more statements and premises. Refer to the process of drawing a conclusion that follows logically from 2 statements. The statement will be, you're saying something will happen, and it actually happens. Those are the statements. Meaning the premises support what supports the conclusion. The statement supports the conclusion. That is deductive reasoning. Refer to the process of drawing a conclusion that follows logically from 2 or more statements. If you don't study, you fail the exam. That is the statement, the premise. And eventually you fail the exam. That's the conclusion. That's active reasoning. Inductive reasoning, they say uses available evidence to generate a conclusion about the likelihood of something. Uses available evidence to generate a conclusion. When you say due to unemployment, in South Africa, there's an increase in poverty, or that will lead to crime. To gather evidence, certain percentage, we have certain percentage of unemployed people in South Africa that might lead to crime, and that actually hence the likelihood of something. Using evidence to draw a conclusion, the likelihood of something. They say use this available evidence to generate a conclusion about the likelihood. Example I've given you. 3. Reasoning you have is formal and informal. Formal reasoning, the premises are stated explicitly, whereas informal reasoning, they are implied than explicit. Reasoning is what is implied and explicit. Formal reasoning is clear. It's a clear argument. Informal reasoning argument is not clear. Fallacy. Fallacy. So in concepts like this, if you find it difficult to memorize them, to put them into practice, you look at the key words, because they're doing multiple choice. If you find it hard to understand or imply them in practical setting, you look at the keywords. Formal reasoning has to do with what? Explicit. Informal reasoning, implied, not explicit. Those are the keywords. Deductive and inductive. The keywords here, they say, refer to the process of drawing a conclusion that follows from two or more. They say two or more statement premise, that is deductive. Whereas inductive reasoning, they use what? Available evidence. Some they might say available resources to generate what? The likelihood of something. Here they don't say likelihood, here they say likelihood. So you look at the keywords. How do you associate inductive with the likelihood of something? Evidence, available evidence. They say instead of evidence, they say statement, premises, two or more. Look at the keywords for you to remember. Then fallacy. Fallacy is a playing on someone's sympathy. Playing on someone's sympathy to get things done. Trying to discredit an issue by discrediting the person who supports the issue. Relying on the characteristics of a certain group in order to gain support for a particular conclusion. Using false analogy means implying that things that are similar are actually identical, using slightly changed version of something. Let me give you examples for you to understand it. Let me give you example. Let's start with this one. They say playing on someone's sympathy to get something done. Playing on someone's sympathy. Let me open the textbook. You'll find examples in your study unit as well. Let me check for practical examples in the recommended book. In the recommended book, page 5. But you relate to the examples. Playing on someone's sympathy to get things done. The example will be, they say, for example, student who fails an exam asks the lecturer to give him marks, a pass mark, because he has difficult circumstances. You phone a lecturer, playing on someone's sympathy to get things done. You phone a lecturer. You know, firstly, you discover that you failed the exam. But now that you failed the exam, you phone a lecturer. When you phone a lecturer, tell the lecturer that, please give me a pass mark. Why? Because I'm experiencing personal circumstances, difficult personal circumstances. That is playing with someone's sympathy to get things done. Your personal circumstances doesn't mean that you might get a pass mark. You are playing with what? someone is sympathy. You cannot just get a pass mark. Instead, you must apply for necrotics. You must apply for supplementary to redo the module. You cannot just get a final mark. That what you are playing with someone's empathy is more like a blackmail. Because I'm experiencing personal circumstances, I deserve a pass mark. The lecturer will understand, no. Because someone died in my family, the lecturer will understand, I need to get a pass mark, no. You don't just get a pass mark, but the process, the procedures on how to redo the pass mark. Yes, to understand the circumstances, you understand the challenges, but the procedure is apply for necrotics, apply to get a supplementary exam, to avoid playing with someone's sympathy. Imagine the lecture gives you a pass mark. That is unethical. Meaning all students need to get a pass mark. So that is playing with someone's sympathy to get things out. It's more like a blackmail. Do this for me because of this. Playing with someone's sympathy to get things done. 2, trying to discredit an issue by discrediting a person who supports the issue. I give you a lesson right now for you to pass it. And Avila decide. No, sir, let me conduct the lesson today. Avila conduct the lesson. However, you discredit Avila content statement because he's not a tutor, she's not a tutor, she's not a lecturer. They say trying to discredit an issue by discrediting a person who supports the issue. Because Avila is not a lecturer, because Avila is not a tutor, you don't listen to him, you don't listen to her. You don't listen to Sarah, you don't listen to Sia, because they are not tutors, they are not lecturers. You discredit their statements, meaning you look down on their content, you look down on their explanation. You make sure to discredit them because you don't believe in their knowledge. That is discrediting someone, discrediting an issue, and discrediting a person who says the issue because you judge him or her. Is that clear? I come to you, just an ordinary person. I tell you that 30% of South Africa is experiencing recession. By experiencing recession, employment rate is going up. However, you don't take that statement from that person because you undermine the person. You decide to discourage the person because you undermine him or her. Because the person perhaps does not have a qualification. So that you're discrediting an issue because of the person. Undermine the person. That is discrediting the person. Trying to discredit an issue by discrediting a person who supports the issue. They say, number 3, relying on the characteristics of a certain group in order to gain support for your conclusion. Relying on the characteristic of a certain group in order to gain support for a particular group. They made an example here that real men adverts. Advertisement will tell you that real men drink beer. Most people drink alcohol because of peer pressure. They drink alcohol to be accepted by the society. When you go to a club, it's difficult to drink juice or to drink water. Because most of the people drink what? Drink alcohol. That's why they say you relying on the characteristics of a certain group in order to gain support for a conclusion. Adverts say, most of the adverts say, real men drink beer. Then you drink beer. Drink strong beer. Some people will tell you that the real beer is the one that is ugly compared to the one that is sweet. Meaning, we are relying on the characteristic of a certain group in order to gain support for a conclusion. I hope the explanation is clear. the book says, for example, in an advertisement, we state that real men drink beer. Is playing on the sentiments of men who want to be seen as manly. So if you want to be seen as manly, if you want to be accepted in a society, you do what they do. That is really relying on the characteristic of the same group in order to gain support for that particular group. You do things that they do in order to be accepted. When you drive slow, you are seen as sissy. What is when you drive fast and people clap your hands, clap the hands, clap hands for you? Then you feel like manly. You feel accepted in the society. That is relying on certain characteristics in order to gain popularity, in order to be accepted. Then use a slightly changed version. Using a forced analogy means implying that things are similar but they are identical. Example would be Nomsa loves her husband and is happy to be a housewife. If you would rather work than be a housewife, then you do not like your husband. This is an example. Normally, women culturally, traditionally, the narrow view of things. Women are seen as what? As nurturing. Women are seen as housewives. They say using forced analogy means implying that things that are similar are identical. So here they're giving us an example. Please listen to this example. They say Nomsa loves her husband and is happy to be a housewife. Nomsa loves her husband and is happy to be a housewife. Then someone come and say, if you would rather work than be a housewife, then you do not love your husband. Let's listen to the statement again. Nomsa loves her husband and is happy to be the housewife. Someone come and say, for you to show love to your husband, you need to be a housewife. For you to love your husband, you need to be a housewife. You need to do things that other women does. That is a false analogy. Means you imply means implying that things are similar are actually identical. No, you are relating issues that it doesn't mean that when you're not a housewife, it doesn't mean that Nomsa, if you're not a housewife, you don't like your husband. Yes, it doesn't mean that. The statement says if using a false analogy implying the situation, you are a housewife by choice, not because you are proving your love to your husband. That's what they say, false analogy. You are a housewife by choice, not that you don't love your husband. So people try to imply things in different contexts. It means implying things that are similar, make sure they're identical. So it's a wrong example. It doesn't mean that if you're not a housewife, you don't like your husband. I hope my example is clear. The last one is using slightly changed version. Using slightly changed version of someone else's point of view on the basis of your reasoning. Using slightly changed version of someone else's point of view as a basis of who can we use? Let's use Casper in your best. They can say Mariah Carey. You are in an interview. They ask your opinion regarding what? Abortion. They ask your opinion regarding abortion. Then you say it is your right to abort a baby. It is within your right to abort your baby. As a famous person, that's how you answer. It is within your right to abort or not to abort. Remember, we are asked by journalists. Then front page of the newspaper, it says you as a famous person, let's say Sarah is a famous person. Sarah says is in favor of abortion. Sarah says is in favor of abortion. That's how they interpret it in the newspaper. When they interviewed you, you said it is within your right whether to abort or not. But normally the papers, the journalists change the version of your story. They say using a slightly changed version of someone else's point of view on the basis of your own reasoning. Newspaper article, front line, they change the version. They say to you, Sarah is in favor of abortion. Yabe is in favor of what? Of abortion. They change the version. That's what happens normally celebrity. Then you have to explain yourself. I said this, not this. That is using a slightly changed version of someone's point of view on the basis of your reasoning. To gain popularity, you use a slightly changed. To gain viewership, you use a slightly changed version. That's what the journalists normally do. Lastly, under reasoning, 5, critical reasoning. For you to apply critical reasoning, you need to identify the problem first, keep an open mind, remember the difference between language and reality, use open-ended questions, avoid overgeneralization, be empathic, obtain relevant information, use informal language, not only informal language, develop collective thinking. So normally, multiple choice questions, we might put 5 of these, or 4, and say, choose the correct ones. Choose the correct one. For you to apply critical thinking, we expect you to identify a problem. We expect you to keep an open mind. We expect you to use open-ended question. We expect you to do what? To remember the difference between language and reality. We expect you to avoid generalization, be empathic, obtain relevant information. So make sure that you know these steps. I mean, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 9 steps. Know the steps by heart. Because when you ask multiple choice questions, you can play around them and say to you, choose the incorrect under critical reasoning. Choose the incorrect step under critical reasoning, or choose the correct ones. You put all of the above. You put 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. They choose one that is correct. Is it all of the above, or only identify the problem, or only the 2? Remember the difference between language and reality, and use the open question, or none of the above. That's how you do it. Again, same applies to fallacy. There are 5 types of fallacy in argument. Which one is incorrect? You choose the incorrect. If all the 5 are correct, it will be all of the above. Last one, thinking. And the problem solving. Thinking. The nature of thought. Thinking is a process of applying your mind into something you think. You're applying your mind. You cannot see thinking, you can only see your thinking. Thinking is applying your mind to something. The nature of thought. We think through what? We think through image, because you cannot see your thinking. If I ask you a question, you will think about it. I cannot see your thinking until you open your mouth. So we think through what? Images. Images are symbols. Images are symbolic representation of objects and their characteristics, of which is in your mind. Concepts. When we think, we categorize things between our mind. You cannot see it. They say the categories we form as mental representation of groups of related items called concepts. The concept that you have in our mind. I ask you a question, you can conceptualize the argument. You write your exam, you have concepts in your mind. These are the concepts. The categories we form as mental representation. The categories we form as mental representation of groups of related items are called concepts. What are those concepts? Heuristically, organization of concepts, using concepts in a form of thinking that classifies things in the world, makes sense to us. Rules. We rely on conceptual rules to decide whether or not something belongs to a certain concept or not. Conceptual concepts. Inaccurate use of concepts can lead to error in thinking. Prototypes. Concept formulation, ideal models of concepts. In your notes, you can study this better using your notes, the study units. We have the nature of thinking. We think through pictures, images, the symbols. We think through concepts. We also use language to think. Languages, not Zulu, English, German, French. Language is your inner voice that you cannot see. I ask you questions, you answer your multiple choice question during exam. You use what? You use your inner voice. When you look at something, you interpret it, you use your inner voice. That is thinking, because you cannot see thinking. Language and thought. So that's it. Thinking, keywords, images. Under images is objects, pictures. Concept, under concept, heuristical organization of concepts, conceptual rules, conceptual errors, and prototypes. They form, you find them under concepts in your learning. Then use what? Language. Use what? Language. So we have explained what? Cognition as well as problem solving. Explain and problem solving. I think we can do memory next week to avoid confusing you. Let's do memory next week. For now, we are done with cognition as well as the first one. The first one was what? Emotions. Emotion and cognition. Yeah, let's end here. Emotion and cognition. The information is too much under emotion and cognition. Next week, we'll continue with emotion before we confuse one another. Before we confuse one another. Any questions with regards to cognition? Any question regarding cognition or any question with regard to emotion? We'll do memory next week because I can see the information is too much. If I continue, I'll confuse you better. I can see Sando is giving us another example. Listen, based on relying on the characteristics of certain groups in order to gain section for the cause of action would be a person discrimination. Okay, let me read again. Based on relying on characteristics of certain groups in order to gain transaction for the cause of action, would a person designating controversial vote open to maybe a group of feminists to be considered a fallacy, especially when those feminists support the viewpoints? Let's go back. Let me see if I understand. Let me see if I understand correctly. Let's go back. Okay. You relying on the characteristic of certain group in order to gain support for a particular conclusion. I made an example of beer. Some people drink because they want to be accepted. Some people drink based on the advert. The advert says real men drink beer. That's an advert. Relying on the characteristics of a certain group in order to gain support for a particular conclusion. Then there's another example. Based on relying on the characteristics of a certain group to gain transition for the cause of action, would a person disseminating controversial viewpoint maybe to a group of feminists considering the fallacy, especially when those feminists support the point of view? Okay, it differs. They say, if I understand Tando correctly, Tando is saying, would I be correct if I say, would I be correct when I say, would a person disseminating controversial point of view, maybe to a group of feminists, you're saying something to a group of feminists, you're saying something to a group of feminists, especially when those feminists support the point of view. Yes, that could be correct. When someone is sharing a point of view, particularly to the group of feminists, in order to support that view, particularly to a feminist. I'm not sure of the example that I might come with, but according to this statement, you have a feminist group. You have a feminist group, you share an idea to the feminist group. Because you're in a group of a feminist, chances are you support that statement. When you support that statement, meaning you are based on relying on certain characteristics. You share the statement based on the characteristics of the certain group in order to support the group, in order to be accepted in a group of a feminist. That's how I understand it. For instance, there is LGBTQ, the gay group. A gay group, they have their own ideas. They support certain viewpoints based on their ideas, meaning they rely on a certain characteristics in order to feel accepted in that group. Same applies to feminists. Feminists, they have their own ideologies, the way of doing things, which they discuss amongst one another because they are feminist group, meaning they based on their view, they rely on their views based on their relying on the characteristics of a certain group in order to gain transition of the course of action. Yeah, that is true. I hope I've answered you. Thank you, sir. Okay, Tando. Thank you, sir. That's a good, a good analogy, a good view of it. Another example of characteristics of certain group. So any question, any elaborations regarding what we have discussed?